Today we're discussing 5 things that every multifamily investor needs to know when it comes to flood insurance. So if you're a multifamily investor, stay tuned so we can help protect you when it comes to understanding what exactly to know when it comes to flood insurance. Hello, my name is Chris Green, president and owner of the Flood Insurance Guru. And today we're talking about 5 things that every multifamily investor needs to know when it comes to flood insurance. You know, these are things that could really help save you on a deal. These are things that could help you maybe possibly avoid a bad deal. So let's talk about those things today. So the first thing is, what type of flood insurance coverage do I need? Do I need something just for the building? Do I need something to protect things like appliances on the inside? What about loss of use? You know, what if this building floods and I need loss of rent? How am I going to get protection there? You know, these are all things you need to understand when picking the right flood insurance coverage as a multifamily investor. It's also important to understand when it comes to these type of buildings. You know, sure, the one behind me is a fairly new building, but what if you're making improvements to an older building? What impact could these improvements have on flood insurance options? It's important to understand if you're talking about the National Flood Insurance Program and you've got a building that was built in 1950 and you do more than 50% of the market value improvements on that building, you may go from guidelines back in 1950 to guidelines in 2023, which could be completely different. This means you might have to fill in a basement before you could even get permits to do the work. It means you might have to raise a building. These are all things that are very important to understand when it comes to making improvements or looking at improvements on these buildings. Now let's talk about flood insurance options, which is number 3. And that is talking about the National Flood Insurance Program and private flood insurance. It's important to understand as a multifamily investor that you know the difference between these two, where one is through a federal government, one is through a private company, and these rates are built differently. Now let's talk about exclusions. Now this is a big thing where we see multifamily investors get in trouble, where they just assume the flood insurance policy is going to cover basically the same thing that maybe a property policy would cover. And come to find out, they don't have loss of use because they took out a National Flood Insurance Program policy which didn't cover it. This can be a big exclusion if it's not listed on the policy correctly. Maybe replacement costs. You know, if you're doing business inventory in this thing and you're doing a National Flood Insurance Program policy, you may not have replacement costs on those appliances. This could cost you a lot of money. You know, the National Flood Insurance Program only offers up to $500,000 per commercial building. Private flood insurance offers different. So it's important to understand this. Then there comes bank requirements. This seems to be the biggest kicker for a lot of multifamily investors. And one reason is if you're going through the National Flood Insurance Program, you may have different requirements compared to a private flood insurance policy. And that is because the National Flood Insurance Program only offers building coverage up to $500,000. They only offer that business property coverage up to $500,000. They don't offer things like loss of use. So you may be required to take out more coverage if you're doing a private policy. You may even be required to do what's called an excess policy on top of that National Flood Insurance Program policy to give you more coverage. So these are 5 things that every multifamily investor needs to know when it comes to flood insurance. So if you're ready to take the next steps as a multifamily investor of getting that right flood insurance in place,
3 simple things. Step 1, fill out the form on our website. Step 2, connect with one of our flood education specialists. And step 3, pick the plan that best fits your commercial needs. Thank you.